Alex, I'm going to hand back to yourself. Hopefully connectivity is working to share about AMRC, if you could please.
Absolutely. Morning, guys. Let's try this again. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, it's just come through.
Fantastic. So my name is Alex Godber here. I'm the Technical Fellow for Smart Factories at the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre. So I'm going to spend the next few minutes or so talking about a piece of work that we've been doing for the past year or so. And it's really around how we standardize the way that we connect to largely shop floor machines and data consumers across our organization, and how that work is a real enabler for data consumers such as digital twins. So really briefly, a little bit about the AMRC. So we are based in Sheffield. We were established back in 2001. And we're one of the centres in the high value manufacturing catapult network. And across our groups within the AMRC, we specialise in research areas such as machining composites, design, automation, castings and connectivity. And myself, I personally specialise in connected smart factories. And I'm situated in our Factory 2050 facility, which is home to our integrated manufacturing group. That's the round building in the bottom left corner of your screen there. So what research is really happening in this area and why is it important? So I appreciate that not everybody on this call is from a manufacturing background. So there are a lot of acronyms on that slide which probably don't look familiar. But don't worry, that the general gist of this image that you can see here is that the kind of the large box on the right are data producers. So they are things like sensors, devices, equipment, and the kind of the mesh of boxes on the left there are largely data consumers. So dashboards, management software, scheduling applications. And typically, as manufacturing organizations grow, so do their digital requirements. And if you kind of couple that with the rapid acceleration of new technologies in the last kind of couple of decades, and what happens is those digital architectures tend to kind of organically grow and become slightly Frankenstein-like. And what that does is it results in what you can see on the left here, which is a complex mesh of kind of point-to-point connections. And each of those connections usually speaks a different language or a different protocol, and it doesn't really scale. So what we're trying to drive is architectures that utilize what we call a unified namespace. And it's effectively a centralized single source of truth, which is established through a common interface or a common framework. And what we've done at the AMRC is we've developed Factory Plus. Now, Factory Plus is a completely open access, standardized connectivity framework that defines how to kind of practically establish a unified namespace within a manufacturing environment. Now, I won't kind of deep dive into the specifics of the framework in this call, but the link is on the screen there, and that is to a public-facing web portal. So you should be all able to access that. But in short, what it does is it standardizes the way that we connect to machines within the organization, and it normalizes and standardizes the structure of the data that we collect. And through a layer of the architecture called the consumption framework, it standardizes the way that the data can be consumed by things like digital twins and other applications. So what we can do with Factory Plus, and this is just one example, and I've got another example on the next slide of kind of how we're using this standardized architecture to consume that data. So the first step is we ingest data into the UNS, which is the unified namespace, via Factory Plus. And within the AMRC, we have most of our machines connected to Factory Plus. So we're constantly harvesting this data. And the next step is to extract the live status of a device. So let's say we want to query, in this case, it's a manufacturing cell. We connect to the unified namespace and we extract the data from that cell via the unified namespace. And then through that consumption framework, we load metadata, we load configuration information about that cell. So in this case, it's the position of the robot and the various parts of this manufacturing cell within the cell, and also the type of robot. And then from there, we can link the two together, and we can almost rig that 3D supervised digital twin with the live data coming from the unified namespace to kind of automatically produce this. So there's no kind of manual positioning or rigging happening here. It's all coming through the Factory Plus framework. And then in a similar example, but slightly different, is we're using the same building blocks, the same tools to produce automatic dashboards of assets within the organization as well. So the two images on the right there were automatically generated when a device comes online. So for example, when we connect in this case, it's a cell called a filament winder, which is used in our composites group. And when we configure that device in the first instance, we say this device is a filament winder, and here is the data model or the schema for that device or that manufacturing cell. And when that device or cell comes online, the consumption framework can automatically generate these dashboards. In this case, we're using Grafana, but the idea here is we've defined a standardized interface. So it could be whatever dashboarding software you choose to use. So that was a real whistle-stop tour, really, of some of the work that we've been doing in the AMRC. But it's really important to note that the outputs of Factory Plus, they weren't to develop a dashboard or the kind of the 3D supervisory digital twin, really, or any other consumer. It was really to develop that vehicle, that pipeline, to fundamentally enable those consumers to exist in the first place. And what's quite interesting is we, as the AMRC, we now have an operational standard for data access across the entire organization. And that's really changed our culture internally. So it's replaced questions like, how do I connect to this device, or where do I store the data, or what structure do I use? Those questions have been replaced with, okay, now we've got this standardized, normalized data. What manufacturing problems can we solve with that data that we have, and what research can we do with that data? So my contact details are at the bottom of that slide. They're also at the bottom of the Factory Plus portal there. So, like Scott, any questions? More than happy to answer them now or at the end. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alex. So questions, please post them to Mentimeter, and we'll be coming to that just after we first go to Mark Henderson. Some questions.